Okay, Belinda, thank you. Well, amidst the horror, there actually were heroes in Nashville, like the police officers who ran toward the shooter to stop the bloodbath. And it's reported that the school principal did something similar before she was gunned down. Pastor Marc Little has seen his share of violence, and he's also counseled victims and families too, and he joins us tonight. Pastor, thanks so much for being with us.
I wish it was under other circumstances, but I'm glad to be with you.
On Monday, we had Pastor Alan Jackson, who lives in the Nashville area. He was with us, and he said one of the hardest things is to counsel people in times like this. How do you do it? It must be the hardest thing to do, right, as a pastor?
It is, and obviously you do it with as much love as you can muster. But many people know that I'm a victim of a survivor, I like to say, of violent crime. I also lost a daughter at 6 weeks old. And so this is very, very close to my heart. And the pain that these parents and that these families are experiencing is really indescribable. But the Bible speaks to it, thank God. The Bible tells us in Galatians 6:2 that we're to bear one another's burdens. And so this is a time to flood these families with as much love and support as we can muster as a nation. And then the Bible also speaks to the healing process, because there's no words that will just make it go away. As a pastor and as a man, I know I can't make it go away. But Jesus said in Luke chapter 4:18, he said, among other things, he said, I've come to heal the brokenhearted. He came to set the captives free. That speaks to both those who are mourning, and it also speaks to those who are evil and would carry out such heinous crimes, that God also came to release them from their bondage. The word is alive, and it's going to help us as a nation get through this very, very difficult time.
You mentioned it, if I may be personal, to ask you about your daughter and the circumstances and how you as a father got over that, and then what that did to you as a pastor.
Well, it certainly gave me a perspective of the power of God, because what I just shared with you is a result of what I experienced. So my wife and I were adopting a little girl in Ethiopia, and we met her at 6 days old, and we rushed back to the States to get our paperwork done, and we left enough formula and funds to make sure that she was being cared for. And while we were gone, the manager of the orphanage took vacation, and he locked her formula up in a cage. And they watered down the formula that they did have, and it caused hypernatremia. I forget the word, but it's sodium, too much sodium. Neonatal hypernatremia. And she passed away. They told us, no, she just has pneumonia. And then a week later, they called and said she's passed. And so to your answer, one day, my mother called me. And my wife and I were gripped with the pain of not being able to fix it, not understanding the hand of God, because we had fought so long to be parents. And how could you give us this little girl and then just take her? Just take her. We were mad at God, and we couldn't understand this tragedy. And then I got a call from my mother. And she said, very calmly, she said, Mark, the Lord shared something with me that he told me to share with you. He said, you and your wife thought that you were adopting Rael so that you could be parents. But the Lord told me to tell you that he just wanted little baby Rael to know the love of a mother and father before he took her home. And it was like lightning. And it all made sense that we were used to be a part of God's plan. And that healed us in that very moment.
Well, I am so sorry about that. Let me ask you something that's somewhat controversial. Should we at this point consider having our teachers and administrators and those inside school districts and buildings to be armed as a way of a first response?
Thank you so much. Because for me, that question is not controversial. It's a question that begs common sense. So we know that we're not going to amend further the Second Amendment that says we have a right to bear right to keep and bear arms, and it shall not be infringed. What we must do is what we witnessed these Nashville police officers do, which is precision policing, which is competent active shooter response. But what we have to do is identify and respond to soft targets. Schools are soft targets. There is technology like ShotSpotter that helps police respond instantly to shots being fired. There are armed police, armed guards, retired veterans with dogs. That's a response. This particular gunman went to this school as opposed to another location because this location was a soft target. We have to stop sending money all around the world. I don't mind that, but a piece of it has to be redirected at the local level and then at the federal level to secure our soft targets. Let's stop talking about amending the Second Amendment. That's not going to happen. Let's talk about protecting our children.
And let's talk about the heroes from that day. You know, they kind of get forgotten in all of this, but the police officers who went right at it and the administrator who gave her life to try to protect those kids. Sometimes there are really wonderful stories that come out of this, the heroism that day.
That is so true, and it's a community, as you read, I'm sure, in the New York Post. That was a school that had trained, and that headmaster was prepared. How about if she had had a concealed weapon? I'm in favor of that. That community should be applauded. Unfortunately, they won't be invited to the White House to get a Medal of Honor, unfortunately. But I want your viewers to know, again, what the word says. The word helps us in this regard because it says, when wickedness is multiplied, transgressions increase, but the righteous shall see their fall. I want to call upon all Americans to stand in obedience to God, which is righteousness, and to hold on and don't be discouraged. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. I want families to know that in everything God will bring about his purpose. And as painful as it may be, he's there. His Holy Spirit, the Paraclete, is there beside you to comfort you and to keep you and to hold you up. And you'll make it through this, and he shall see you through.
Pastor Marc Little, we appreciate you being on with us on CenterPointe.
I'm praying for you. I'm praying for our nation. God is in control.